Okay, good morning, everybody. Um, Today we are going to be learning Parashat Vayeshev. I am hoping that we could also do some Hanukkah introduction. First and foremost, I'd like to dedicate this class. Thank you. We had many sponsors for today's class, and I want to thank you all for your generosity. I want to dedicate today's class in honor of my new great nephew, born to Freddie and Jessica Syed. And we have a beautiful dedication from Michelle Safra in celebration of the birthday of her daughter, Gabriela Batsara. Thank you, Michelle, and happy birthday, Gabriela. Also for the Refuah Shelema of Shaul Ben Adel. And I want to thank Marilyn and Jason Tache for dedicating in the Refuah Shelema of Jessica Baitner, Yael Liora Batsara. Always I have in mind Leah Bat Yitel, Refuah Shelema. And I hope that our learning today will also elevate the neshama of my friend Audrey Levy, Alea Shalom. She, Chana Bat Rachel, she left us too soon. She was too young, and I personally will miss her. She frequented our Zoom classes often. She was a part of our chevra, and I hope that our learning will elevate her neshama to the highest realms. Let's go straight into the Parashah. It's chapter 37, Pasuk 1. It starts with the word Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megure aviv. And Yaakov, it seems to say settled. Vayeshev is a big word. We'll talk about it. He settled in the land of his forefathers in Eretz Canaan. So as we start our parasha, it seems that we are being pulled back to the past. We're being pulled back to the place where Yaakov's fathers had settled. It looks as if, or it seems as if the text is taking us to the past, to what was, to the parents, to the great grandparents. And Yaakov is Vayeshev. It sounds like Vayashov. It sounds like he's either settling or he's returning to that place. And if Torah is anything, it's a guidebook on life. There is very little room for Vayeshev, for settling. There is no such thing as long as we have breath within us. This idea of having a sense of being settled, whether it's emotionally or physically, it's not part of the construct of the way the world operates. And especially the commentaries will say for the tzaddikim, there is a lot to do, there is a little time, and this idea of Vayeshev should jar us. We should read it with glaring lights saying something's about to happen, and for sure it does. Because as Yaakov is resting on his laurels, as well he should. He had a very action-packed life. By the time we get to Vayeshev, we just finished. He thinks that he could exhale. He could breathe a sigh of relief. He just got out unscathed from meeting with his brother who was going to kill him. And yet, this sense of calm is going to elude Yaakov, and it's going to do it for him in a big way. So when we read the next verse, it says, Ele toldot Yaakov. So if the first verse was telling us of his past, the next one is telling us of his future, what comes from him. And when we see Ele toldot Yaakov, what would we expect? Again, if we didn't have the words right in front of us and we were only hearing the Torah reading, let's say in shul, and you're going to tell me Ele Toldot Yaakov, we would clearly expect for them to name all the children of Leah, the children of Zilpah, of Bilhah, the children of Rachel. We were there. We traveled with Yaakov and his wives through every single birth. I know why they were named the way they were named. We cried together with Rachel when she gave birth to Binyamin. She named him Ben Oni, and his father changed his name to Binyamin. I know the Toldot of Yaakov, yet the Torah comes and says, these are the Toldot of Yaakov. Yosef is 17 years old as he was shepherding his brothers, and this is not me giving a run-on sentence. All this, if you have a Chumash in front of you, is all part of Pasuk 2. These are the generations of Yaakov. Yosef is 17 years old. He was a shepherd of or with his brothers, and he was a lad together with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, the wives of his father. And it's all part of the same pasuk. Yosef used to come to bring the evil reports, the bad reports, to their father. Very big verse. A lot of things are taking place. Rather than here, as we had with the children of Edom, the children of Esav, where the princes were all listed at the end of last week's parasha, we would have said, okay, if it's going to be symmetrical, then list the princes of Esav, of Edom, and then list the princes of Yaakov and Yisrael. Instead, it starts to give us a sense that there's once again a selection process taking place. And this is concerning to us. We already saw with Abraham where Yishmael was banished. And then we saw with Yitzchak's 2 children, where Yaakov is chosen instead of Esav. And now we're hoping that we're going to break that pattern where there's a favored child, and right away, in a mouthful of a pasuk, we have Yaakov having a generations, Toledot, and all we have is mention of his one son, Yosef. So we need to fasten our seatbelts and say, we already know, again, if we never read the story just by reading verse 2, we would know that trouble is brewing. And then it says he's ro'eh et echav. Doesn't say ro'eh im. He wasn't with, he may have been the shepherd of his brother. Very often it's a euphemism for a leader, is that he's leading his flock. It's as if he's their shepherd. So it's a little bit self-fulfilling, this pasuk, because he is going to end up being their shepherd. And on top of it, I know I'm telling you a lot of things in one pasuk, but we need to set the stage. And the stage here is starting to be set by them calling him, he is 17 years old, but they're calling him a na'ar, a young lad, and then they're drawing lines in the sand. Because all of a sudden we're seeing that maybe they're not one big happy family, that maybe there's a team, there's one side who are the children of Bilhah and the children of Zilpah, and Yosef is part of that contingency. He's part of that group. And the Torah has to tell me, as if I didn't already know, those women, Bilhah and Zilpah, they were the wives. They were not the shefachot. Don't confuse them with Hagar or somebody else who may not be, or a Pilegesh. They are full-fledged, according to verse 2, Neshe Aviv, the wives, which means that they inherit properly. There's a lot of laws that come along with being the Isha. And what did Yosef used to do? He used to bring their evil tidings, their dibatam, whatever they would say or do, whether they would divarim or speech or actions, and come and report them to his father. So already we know trouble brewing. Verse 3 is, I think, where it gets the most difficult of all, because a minute ago we were calling them Ele Toldot Yaakov, but by the time we get to verse 3, Yaakov is Yisrael. Ve'Yisrael ahavet Yosef, and Yisrael is the one who loves Yosef from all of his sons, and it qualifies why he loves him. He is his ben zekunim. He is his son of his old age. Either he's his son that ministers him in his old age, or he's his son that he spends his most precious time with educating him. And ve'asalo, it gets worse, kutonet pasim, and he makes him that technicolor dream coat, we'll call it. He makes him a coat of many colors. And why is verse 3 so troubling? It's not as troubling to me as it is going to be to the brothers. It's one thing if Yaakov loves Yosef. Yaakov, the family man. Yaakov, the one who fell in love with Rachel. Yaakov, the one who Rachel was his favorite wife. It makes sense that Yaakov, who loved Rachel, would love Yosef. But when you write that Yisrael ahavet Yosef, that becomes more concerning. Not just to me, it's going to become concerning to the brothers, because Yisrael seems to be a more nationalistic name for Yaakov, the name that encompasses all of the future that is Yaakov. And if Yisrael is going to love Yosef, it starts to tell us that Yosef is the front runner who's going to be carrying, my friend Amalia taught me this, the mantle of leadership. She said that when in other cultures throughout history, that when the leadership was passed on either from father to son, or whoever the coat or the mantle, that's what a mantle is, whoever the robes were passed on to, like Bigdeh Esav Hachamudot. He was wearing the begadim. Why does Esav have begadim? Why does Yaakov feel he needs to wear the begadim to get the beracha? Not just because they're hairy, but because they represent the mantle of leadership. They represent either the firstborn in this case. And so when he makes him this ketonet pasim, it becomes very concerning. And verse 4 agrees. Vayir'u echav, and his brothers see, ki oto ahav avihim, that Yosef is the one that their father likes, mikol echav, from all of the other brothers. And now we have some strong words here. Vayisneu oto, they hated him. Velo yachlu dabro leshalom. These are very hard. If there are children in the room, you want to cover their ears. These are very hard words to read. Vayisneu oto, brothers hating brothers. And not only did they hate him, lo yachlu dabro leshalom. This is one of the hardest pieces to read, and I think it's a lesson in text. The silent treatment. If we sat and analyzed what the silent treatment is, it's pretty concerning. The fact, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs used to say, alav shalom, where there are no words, there are weapons. If you can't communicate, if you can't use your words to speak, what does it mean, lo yachlu dabro leshalom? If I want to speak with somebody and they don't want to respond, it means I can't hear you. And you know why I can't, or I don't, or I won't hear you? I can't hear you because to me, you don't exist. You are a non-existent entity in my world. So you could speak and you can cry and you can scream, but it means nothing to me because I can't even hear you, because nothing that you have to say to me is of value. and you certainly don't warrant my response. I'm not even going to dignify you or your presence with an answer from me. It's a cold war of words when two people stop communicating. You know, they say where there's a married couple, let them scream and yell at the top of their lungs, because at least they're communicating and there's a chance that they will come to a meeting of the minds. But if you bring a couple for therapy and they're no longer on speaking terms, it's a shame that we even have a phrase for it, not on speaking terms. That means that they've written each other off as human beings. That's a pretty tough statement to read here. And so in verse 5, Vayachalom Yosef Chalom. We're reading this and we know, when we see Vayachalom Chalom, we say to ourselves, why do you have both words there? It could have just said Vayachalom Yosef, Vayaged Le'echav. I don't need the second Chalom. The two times, the double appearance of that word dream, of that word Chalom, already we know as readers there are going to be two dreams. Now here's where it gets interesting. We don't get to hear the dream as it's told by the narrator. We only get to hear the dream as it's told by Yosef. And this is very important because dreams fall into many different categories. We know that dreams could be prophecy, and we know that dreams could also be, as Freud would say, wishful thinking, like daydreaming, the things that you are most thinking about during the day those are the things that manifest at night in your dreams. A dream is a wish a heart makes, from Disney. So here we're only getting to see what Yosef's takeaway of his dream was, how he processed it, which is interesting because when Yaakov had the dream of his ladder, we never heard the dream retold by him. The account was given by the narrator, by God himself, by the Torah. So we were able to get a very clear depiction of what Yaakov dreamt. Here, the reader, are stuck wondering how much of this is embellished. Once it's processed by the person, how much of it is actual and how much of it did Yosef give his own subjective spin on. So he's going to tell his brothers, and you'll notice, Vayaged lecha vayosifu otzeno oto. Here's that word sinah again, but he has a dream, he tells his brothers, and they hate him even more. It's possible that he didn't even tell them the dream, that all he did was say, I had a dream last night. And just the the sheer idea that Yosef is saying, I had a dream, even that irks him. But that doesn't stop Yosef. He says, don't you want to hear the dream that I had? Shim'una, come, listen to my dream. Hachalom hazeh asher chalamti, this dream that I dreamt. And in his telling of the dream, he starts by saying, and we're going to see this word appear often, and we're sharp readers now of the text. We know that every time he uses the word vehineh, he's saying something very specific. He's saying, my dream falls into the category of prophecy, because the word hineh means that there is divine infusion in what I'm about to tell you. And like I said, we're only privy to Yosef's retelling of his own dream. And this is how he tells the dream. Vehineh, and here, behold, God's in the dream. Anachnu me'almim alumim. We are tying together bundles and sheaves of wheat. Betoch hasadeh. We are in the sadeh. I'll read you the whole pasuk first, and then we'll unpack it. Vehineh. Did I mention that this dream is prophecy, my brothers? Kama Alumati, Vayakom, this idea of rising above and being majestic and fulfilling one's potential. He's using every word we've ever learned in one dream. He's saying, Kama Alumati, my bundle rose to the occasion. And if that wasn't enough, because I really don't need the next two words, Vegam Nitzava. We know Nitzavim. All these are words we know. So we're on to Yosef already. We know he means what he says, and he's saying what he means. And that is that his bundle didn't just rise to its potential, but it was nitzav, it was a netziv, it was a commander, it was leading the charge. It was like Yaakov's ladder that was mutzava. I am the one who is the continuum of daddy's dream where the sulam was mutzav. Now my aluma is nitzava, standing at attention and ready to serve. And so I said we weren't going to unpack it yet, but I'll just give you the last few words and I'm going to want to go back a little bit. In case we missed the first two vehines, now we have a third one. Oh, and by the way, vehine, get a load of this part. Did you hear this? Because this part was also divinely ordained. Tesubena alumotechem, all of your bundles surrounded mine. Vetishtachavena le'alumati, the final nail. And they bowed down to my aluma. What is he saying? First of all, this is how it's recorded in the Torah. So what he said to his brothers, I would think, in some way very much resembled how we're feeling about this. When I started with the me'almim alumim, the language that he's using, we were bundling sheaves, it starts to resonate from Rivka's original prophecy that she also received from God. She went to God and God answered her. And he answered her question when those children were having tension within her. He told her, you have two nations. And then he said these words, you know how God told Grandma Rivka, le'om mile'om, almim alumim that we have here, you know how he told her that the nations, one will be strengthened from the other? Well, my brothers, it's your lucky day, because the fact that we are bundling wheats together, it symbolizes united we stand. When we bundle together, like God told Rivka, when we bundle together, that's where our strength is going to come. And you know where we were? We were betoch hasadeh. Now, I'm in the dream, and I'm betoch hasadeh. So what is he saying? If you need a rocket scientist to unpack it, what was the sadeh? In case we didn't cover, we covered the Rivka part with the me'almim alumim. I also want to cover the Yitzchak part, because Yitzchak went lasuach basadeh. The sadeh is a place of divinity. It's the place where Yitzchak had sent Esav. He sent him to the sadeh to bring him food. You think he was just sending him to the sadeh to go hunting? Or maybe he sent him to the sadeh so that he could have a divine encounter. And he sent him to the sadeh so he could be more spiritual before he blesses him. So everything that Yosef is saying here is irking the brothers, because the brothers now see him wearing the mantle. They see Yisrael, the national figurehead that is their father, choosing and loving Yosef. And now they see Yosef himself proclaiming that he was given this prophecy, the triple vehines in this story. And in the prophecy, the one thing we could say for Yosef, thank goodness he had the mind to leave it a little symbolic, meaning He didn't say that all of your sheaves are bowing down to me personally. He left one degree of removal from himself by saying, your sheaves bowed to my sheaves. Again, you don't need to be a psychology genius to figure out what that would mean, which, by the way, is a very important component to his dream. There doesn't seem to be any mystery surrounding the dream. He doesn't need to tell it to his brothers so that they could then solve the mystery for him. You know, back in the day, if you had a dream and you didn't understand it, you would go pay a dream interpreter. You'd either take the sack of gold coins, you would bake them a cake, you would bring something, because dreams, we believe, follow their interpretation. So if you brought a dream to somebody, you'd want to make sure that they interpreted it favorably, and you'd want them to be in a good mood when they hear your dream, so you bring them some goodies. And now here is Yosef telling his dream to his brothers, but there's really not much necessity for interpretation. So the next verse, verse 8, they say, Vayomru lo echav. At least they're talking, you might say. At least he got them to converse with him. They say, Vayomru lo, they say to him, Hamaloch timloch aleinu. I think we have to break the code of silence here, because this is too much. We can't keep quiet on this. This is something we're busting from. Hamaloch timloch aleinu. Excuse me, Yosef. What are you thinking? What are you saying? What are you suggesting? That you're going to be our king? Imashol timshol banu. What do you think? You're going to be our leader? Vayosifu od senoto. Now they hate him even more for his chalomot, for the fact that he had the dreams, and al devarav. One thing is to have the dreams, the other one is to broadcast the dreams. Does that stop Yosef? No. Verse 9. Vayachalom od chalom. Could have just said vayachalom od, but again, it's throwing this word in there. Acher. Now, we would think that this is a different dream because it says acher, it's a different dream. So if the first dream meant that he was going to be a ruler over them, then this dream must mean something else. But I don't know if it meant something else to Yosef, but the Torah wants us to know that the first dream wasn't part one of the second dream, that the first dream wasn't a carbon copy, just change a couple of elements. And this is our job now to unpack if this is another dream, if this is a dream acher, if this is a different dream, we have to figure out what it means. Because on the face of it, we're going to think, now he dreams again, and he tells his brothers again. Here's the interesting part. It seems that the events are mirroring each other. He dreams, tells them I had a dream. Doesn't look like anybody's saying, oh, please tell us what you dreamt. And then he blurts out his dream, or he asks them to hear it. Here again, he tells to his brothers, and he says, Hine, guess what? Hine, behold, Lordy be, I had a dream, another one. And this time, Hine, Lord be with us. Hashemesh, Hayareach, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars, this time are all bowing down to me, Li, to Yosef, Bichbodo ubeatzmo, in person, not as an asteroid, not as any celestial being. And he told his father, and he told his brothers, and his father chastises him and says, what's this dream that you dreamt? Havon avo? Are you crazy? Do you think me and your mother are going to come, and your brothers, to bow down arza, to the ground? So wait a minute. If the dream was a heavenly celestial dream, Yaakov is now taking a dream that was in the heavens and bringing it down to earth and saying, oh, we're going to bow down to you on the ground. And now, because of this, Vayikanu, we went away from sin'ah, which was hatred, to kin'ah, which is jealousy towards their brother, and their father stays shamaret hadavar. He keeps the story. So we have to talk about this a little bit. If this is not the same dream twice about kingship, about brothers, about either their sheaves or their stars all bowing down to him, then what is this about? And I think what's very important is the fact that he really could have managed with just the first dream. But because the first dream was met with such a reaction and such behavior on his part and such reaction by his brother's part, that the second dream had to come and add a dimension, add something for us. It's telling us it's an acher, it's a different dream. And so what we could start to understand is, yes, the first dream, let's go with the easy pieces that we know already. The first dream, we could call it deterministic, meaning it seems to determine an outcome. We know in advance that he's going to stand up, that he's going to be king, and they're going to bow down to him. And it seems to have this idea that when I use the word deterministic, it's already so it shall be written, so it shall be done. You know, it's already been decided. And by packaging the dream that way, it takes the main character Yosef and puts him in a frame of mind that he doesn't need to do anything in order to bring this dream to fruition. By the way the dream is presented, by the way Yosef is telling it to his brothers, they already read the writing that he presented to them and said, Hamaloch timloch, what do you think? You're going to be our ruler? You're going to be our king? And part of that dream, I believe that he missed. Part of the elements that he missed were, why did God show him the dream? Let's all agree for a minute that this was prophecy. And the reason we could agree to it is because it does happen. And it happens in a very specific way. They come specifically to buy grain in Egypt from him. And when they come to buy grain initially, the fathers and the mothers are not there. It's just the brothers. It's just a Yosef and the brothers story. And all of this makes very perfect sense that it would have been prophecy. But the part that Yosef was so fixated on, he was so focused on the me, marvelous me, the central axis of everybody bowing down to me. He was so busy focusing on that he forgot to realize that the only way that the brothers are going to come and bow down to him is the me'almim alumim part. It wasn't just that the sheaves were bowing to him, it was the bundling. The key component to that dream was the bundling, meaning uniting ourselves. Look, did you ever see a bundle of wheat, by the way? It's packed so tightly that when they open the bundle, I know you're picturing like a pretty little standing stalk tied with a pretty little raffia, nice and whatever. But when bundles of wheat are really packed together, it's even hard to unpack them sometimes because they get so enmeshed one with the other. And I think what God was showing Yosef in the dream is, if you want to be a king, if you want your brothers to bow down to you, if you want to wear the mantle of leadership that your father gave you, because that's when the dream comes. Once he gets the coat, he also gets the dream. So if you want to wear the mantle properly, then you have to stop doing these things like bringing dibatam ra'ah. And you have to stop having color war teams. You have to stop having the children of Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah are one team, and the children of Leah are on another team. You're not going to get the unity that's required for you to be their king unless you do this first. So what God is showing him in his dream, all he saw was the part where he's wearing the crown. Everybody got excited about that part. But he didn't get the message of, in order to be king, first you have to be part of a bundle. And being part of the bundle means that you each make room for the other, that each one of you is so enmeshed in the other that if one, it's like a Sefer Torah, if one of you is hurt, if one of you is broken, if one letter is cracked, the whole Sefer Torah is pasul. You need to worry about the welfare of everybody and create an environment where you're all caring for each other, in order for all of you caring together for each other could become this unit. Now, if you're able to do that, Yosef, and since you're the one that's wearing the kutonet, and it happens to be beautiful, that some of the commentaries say it was a coat that was striped. Pasim are stripes, and the stripes could have been woven of different color yarns. We have other places in Tanakh where the children of the king are given these special robes so that they could be identified as royalty. If you want to wear this coat, it's going to be multicolored. And if it was indeed multicolored, then it's even more beautiful, because the way the colors are all together on your coat, the way your coat is unifying all of these different, I'll use an example of the Kohen Gadol. He's going to wear the choshen, the breastplate, which is going to have the 12 stones that represents each tribe. Those stones all work together in tandem. If one stone isn't on the choshen, it isn't a choshen anymore. It can't function. Imagine you take your computer and you pluck out one of the functions, the whole computer doesn't work anymore. And so what God is saying, the ketonet pasim is in and of itself resembling of how you need to, your name is Yosef, for goodness sakes. What is Yosef? It means me'asef. It means the gatherer, the one who brings everybody together. Come on, get a grip, get your act together. Be the ketonet pasim. Don't just wear the ketonet pasim. Be the one who's unifying all the colors. When you could wear that coat properly, proudly, appropriately, when you could bundle yourselves like your brothers, yes, you could be in the Sadeh and God will speak to you. But guess what? All your brothers are in the Sadeh too. I'm not only with you, Yosef, in the Sadeh. You and your brothers all have access to divinity. But one of you is going to be the leader, and it's going to be you, but it doesn't make them any less fantastic or any less great. And that's the part that Yosef missed in processing his dream. And so why do we need the next dream then? The next dream says, okay, Yosef, I gave you all of the analogies on the earthly plane. I gave you everything there was for you to understand what my relationship is to you and your brothers and how things are going to be moving forward. But really, Yosef, based on the way you treated the first dream, I need to give you a second dream. And I want to be very clear in this second dream so you understand what is being asked of you. And so this time, in his dream, there's a shemesh, there's a yareach. In this dream, it involves, we'll call them the parents. I think it's a very beautiful and accurate translation of the dream, since the second time around, the parents do come to Mitzrayim and they do bow down to him. I know Rachel has since passed away, but the fact that he is with Zilpah's children and Bilhah's children, we get the sense that maybe Bilhah and Zilpah raised him in the absence of his mother. Leah also comes. So all of these elements do come to fruition. But then we have this thing where the 11 stars are bowing down to him, to his person, to Yosef, not a representation of Yosef. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And we have to ask ourselves, what is going on? And then his father comes and yells at him, and we're stuck wondering a lot of things. So the first thing I'd like to say is that Yosef's trajectory throughout the Parashah is one of rise and fall. He rises to be the favorite son. He rises to what the dreams describe him as being, the one who's going to be wearing the familial crown on his head. He has all of these great risings, and then what happens to them immediately? In 1 second, we're going to turn the page, and all of a sudden, where are we going to find Yosef? We're not going to find him at the top of the throne. We're going to find him in the bottom of the pit. And then what's going to happen? He's going to get plucked out of the pit, and he's going to go to Potiphar's house, and little by little by little, he's going to be at the tippity top of Potiphar's house, till nobody's bigger than Potiphar except for Potiphar. Where's he going to go from there? From there, he's going to go all the way back down to the dungeons, back to the jails in Mitzrayim. And where's he going to go from there? All the way up back to the tippy of the toppest that you could possibly achieve in Mesopotamian tradition. Other than the Pharaoh himself, he's the next highest, and he was, if not as powerful, more powerful than Pharaoh. Pharaoh had the title, but he had the position. And so we start to get the sense with Yosef, it's all or nothing. There's no middle ground. If Yosef got into an elevator, he only has 2 buttons, the basement or the penthouse, all the way up, all the way down. There is no middle ground for Yosef. His dreams show him Arza. We're going to start in the Aretz, and where are we going to go? All the way up. Do not going on a mountain. Do not pass go. All the way from the lowest part to the highest, above the stars, above the sun, above the moon. God is showing him these are 2 realities for you. If it's a dream acher, if it's a different dream, it's showing Yosef you have 2 places, 2 domains, 2 openings for you. Don't think for 1 second that this dream is a deterministic dream. Don't think it's been determined. Don't think it's in the bag. Don't think for a minute that you've already achieved what you need to achieve to get to this place. And so maybe it brings to mind, because it's a dream, and because Yaakov, his father, had a dream also, maybe it's begging us to remember what is missing in Yosef's dream that Yaakov had clearly depicted for him. It took a place of prominence in the Yaakov dream. And the Yaakov dream, very carefully, we'll say, had a ladder. It had rungs. It had steps in between. It wasn't all just up or all just down. It wasn't just the penthouse or the basement. There's this idea of rungs. And what does that mean for us? What is God telling Yosef? He's telling us as well. You want to be a leader. You want to be a ruler. You want to sit and live amongst the stars. What is it that you want to accomplish in your life? And somebody wrote that the angels were missing. And I'm going to tell you very clearly, by these dreams, by the time Yosef has his dreams, we are our own angels. We are the ones who have to go up and down that ladder. What God is telling Yosef is you can't make it to the throne pressing a button on the elevator. You need to walk the walk. You need to go up one staircase at a time. You need to put in the effort. You need to put in the energy. Because if you're going to get to the top in 1 second, the same way you got to the top in 1 second, what's going to happen to you? You could easily fall to the bottom in 1 second. You didn't create any thresholds for yourself. Yet the stock market, anything in the physical world will tell us what's easily lost is easily gained. What's easily gained is easily lost. Don't try a crash diet. You lose your weight in a minute, you gain it in a minute. You need to create thresholds. You need to go slowly up this ladder. The ladder that was depicted for Yaakov is what isn't here. And so what does Yosef have to do? Yosef has to realize that we bring these dreams, although they may seem deterministic, although they seem like everything is laid out in advance, are anything but. If they are a reflection of our lives, then they are a reflection that there is free choice, that we do bring our fate upon ourselves, that when you're going to have a dream and choose to use it as a point of contention for your brothers, then you're not building your proper thresholds. You're not building your way to the top. And that ketonet pasim, let's just talk about that for a minute. The ketonet pasim, the code of all of these colors, Kislev, I don't know how you feel about the symbols for the months, but the symbol for Kislev is Sagittarius. It's the bow, like a bow and arrow, like a keshet. It's a bow. And why would that bow be synonymous with Kislev? What would the correlation be? And we know that we always read the Parshiyot about Yosef in the month of Kislev. And so maybe, yes, we could look at it as an actual archer's bow, which we know that the archers, if they were in a position of war, if they were in a position of attack, they would have the bow, the rounded part, the belly part, facing towards their enemy, and then they would shoot the arrow. That's how you would know in war. Based on how your enemy is holding his bow, you'd know if they came in peace or if they came in war. So what is the concept here? What is this Sagittarius? What is the Keshet? If you want to talk about the rainbow, for instance, after Noah, God puts a rainbow in the sky. What is that rainbow? Think about it. If God's up in the heavens and the rainbow is an upside down U, then the U is facing God, which means he comes in peace. The rainbow in the sky that he shows after Noah is his way of saying, I am coming in peace. And I am coming in peace. And in order for you to have peace, I am making my rainbow all of these colors so that you understand the ma'almim alumim, you understand the importance of everybody being able to be unified and tied together. This is one of Yosef's greatest challenges. The challenge, and we'll go one further on it, it's one of the challenges that we had in the Greek Hellenistic period of Hanukkah. What was the biggest overarching problem? Why were the Greeks warring with us? Why did they feel the need to destroy our temple, for instance? The Hellenistic view was a view that, let's just talk about this for a minute. They were very sophisticated people. They were not barbarians. They had philosophers, they had mathematicians, they had some of the greatest scientists in the whole world. We're not talking about uneducated people when we talk about the Hellenists. But the one thing that they were hell-bent on, pardon the Hellenistic pun, that they were bent on was destroying the Jewish belief system. And why was that? Because the Jewish belief system, let's go first to the science. Science believes a certain paradigm. It believes that things need to be proven. It believes that A plus B equals C, then A plus B will always equal C. There's no room for a variation in their algorithms, in their scientific theories. You can't move them, you can't change them. But the Jewish people, we believe something completely different. We'll use the small Pach Shemen, for instance. If we took the Pach Shemen to a laboratory and we asked them, how long should this oil take it to a laboratory, right? It has this many ounces and it's going to burn at this many degrees, whatever, however they do it in a Bunsen burner, whatever they're using to figure it out, they're going to figure out X amount of oil can burn for Y amount of time. Okay, give and take a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden, we take that same little oil that was supposed to last for one day, and what happens to it? It lasts for 8 days. So the miracle wasn't just that a cruise of oil intended to last for one day lasted 8 days. The miracle was that we introduced to the world the concept that God is within nature. And if you're going to take God out of nature and you're going to do your theorems and your algorithms without God in nature, then your outcome is always going to be the expected outcome. If you want an unexpected outcome, then you have to embrace, like the Jewish people did, the possibility or the reality that God is within nature and he's the one in control. And he could make crazy, I'm using the word crazy things happen. Probably miracles is a better word. He can bring miracles about where Sarah is going to have a child at 90 years old. He could bring miracles about that you have nowhere in your laboratory to factor in. And so what happens to the Hellenistic view when God comes and gives a breath of his nostrils and totally changes what could have, should have, and would have been? It takes all their theories and debunks them. And so what did they want to do? In every generation, the more scientific and smart and technological a generation becomes, the more they want to take God out of the equation, because God completely tips the scales that they want to call balancing. And so now let's go back to Yosef. What is going on with Yosef? Why does he need these two dreams? Why does the trajectory of his life have to take him from the basement to the penthouse, back and forth? Where's his in between? Where's his equilibrium? There's a very famous statement. It's called Yerida Litzorech Aliyah. And it helps us if we're ever in a time where we're feeling depressed or down or deflated, yerida, we're feeling lowered or we're feeling dejected. We have to say to ourselves, yerida, like the matzah, like the dough, like the olive oil. We are being pressed, yerida, letzorech aliyah, for the sake of our own ability to rise up again. This was the story of Yosef. Every time Yosef gets crunched down, what's able to happen to him is he's able to rise higher. The first time they push him in the board, he rises to Potiphar's house. They pound like the dough. They pound him down again. And next time, what does he do? He rises to ascend the highest throne, for instance. And these yeridot in our lives or in Yosef's lives are meant to be a time for contemplation. They're meant to be a time. Let's go to his first yeridah. His brothers strip him of his coat. because you don't deserve to wear the coat, because you're not a unifier, you're an instigator. And we're going to take that coat away from you. And when we take that coat away from you, maybe you'll see who you are all alone. You'll see, like mountain climbers, for instance, if you want to rise up, if you want to be the one in the stars and the moon and the star and all that stuff, you want to go to the top. Mountain climbers need each other. You can't climb a mountain by yourself. At one point, you need me to pull you up. At one point, you need me to pull you up. It's a give and take. And God is showing Yosef, you need your brothers. You can't get out of a pit by yourself. You need them. You need to understand that they are your rungs. They are your ladder. Your brothers, your family, your community, your nation, the people that you surround yourselves with are a way for you to keep reaching new thresholds. They're the way me'ashpot yarim evyon. How is an evyon? How is a poor person who's in the dust going to pick himself up? Me'ashpot from the ashes. If you have brothers, they can pick you up even from the lowest points, but you need them. You don't need them just to come and bow down to you. You need them because they are going to help you become the person who's worthy, not just wearing the coat, but the person who's worthy of wearing the kingly robes and assuming that position. And who are the ones who teach Yosef this lesson? So he doesn't learn it the first time around because he ends up in the board. He goes from the penthouse to the basement. Then he goes back up to Potiphar's house. He ends up in the basement. And this is the last time you're going to find Yosef in the basement because he learns his lesson clearly. And you know who comes to teach him his lesson? The butler and the baker. Those two guys that he meets in jail. And we'll encounter them, and I guess we'll end with them. I urge you to read the Parashah because it has also the story of Vayered Yehuda. It has a story of Yehuda following a trajectory also, where he is at the top. He's right now the reigning king of his brothers because Yosef is lost, but he goes down, marries a Canaanite, his children die, it's a mess, but he ends up being able to rise up when he notices and he realizes that he needs to put other people, give other people the respect that they deserve. Yosef's dreams, he was only respecting himself. It was all about the I, it was all about the me. Yehuda, the one who is able to show, his name is gratitude, who's also able to admit, Odeh and Yehuda mean the same thing. To show gratitude means Yehuda, and to admit means Yehuda. And only a person who has a strong sense of self could be grateful, could recognize that what he has comes from somewhere else. And that same person is able to be a person who could admit, because Odeh, to admit something, Odeh ale pesha'ai, for instance, to admit something means to diminish yourself and recognize that maybe you're not perfect. And all of this is part of the story of Yosef. It seems to take place with this interruption of Yehuda. Yehuda is not an interruption. He's just a model who's showing us what Yosef needs to learn, what he needs to learn, and of course, what we all need to learn. But I want to end with the last two dreams of the butler and the baker. He meets them in the dungeons where he's been thrown because of the wife of Potiphar's accusal. And it's in chapter 40, verse 5. If you're in the blue books, it's page 218. Vayachalmu chalom shnehem. Again, those words, vayachalmu chalom. We know they dreamt a dream. What else would they dream? But because it says it twice, we know that they each dreamt a dream, and they may have each dreamt each other's dream or each other's solution. The text is very generous and allows for a lot of interpretations, but I'd like to go straight to the story of Sad HaMashkim. And first and foremost, what we need to see is Yosef's reaction to them. In verse 7, Yosef asks them, Madua penechem ra'im hayom. All of a sudden, he's not looking at himself. He's not looking at, oh, me, marvelous me. He's not like the commentaries say, curling up his hair and looking in the mirror all day long. He's able to see outside of himself. He's able to see how somebody else is feeling. I don't think he was feeling so great himself in a dungeon. That's the truth. But even in his time of misery, to have sympathy for somebody else starts to show an awakening on the part of Yosef. And what does he say? They tell him, look, we had a dream, but there's nobody who could interpret them. And Yosef says, Elohim has pitronim. He is introducing to this. They're not Hellenistic, but they're an Egyptian culture that also did not believe in Elohim, our Elohim. He said, Siprun Ali, tell me, what's the dream that you had? And when Sara Mashkim tells his dream, Yosef hears how Sara Mashkim relays his dream, and he realizes that Sara Mashkim does not see his own dream as a deterministic dream, as a fait accompli, as a dream where everything is already determined. It's a neatly tied package, and all he has to do is show up. He doesn't see himself as somebody knocking on the door and say, is Mr. Sara Mashkim here? He's being called to report for duty to the king. That's not what he sees. Sara Mashkim tells Yosef his dream in a way for Yosef to hear his own dream. And what Sara Mashkim says is beautiful. He says, look, I had this dream. There was a vine in front of me. The vine had 3 bunches of grapes that were all beautifully ripening. And I had the cup of paro in my hand. Va'ekach, va'eschot, va'eten, and I was very active in my dream. I took the grapes, I squeezed them into the cup, I gave them to Paro. By the way, the word kos appears 4 times in this story. In the story of the butler, he's going to have his own redemption. He's going to have his own vehitzeti, vehitzalti, vega'alti, velakachti. He's going to have those redemptions because it's a footprint for us. It's the way the Torah is saying. You want to be redeemed, Yosef? You want to get out of the jail? You want to be redeemed later on, Bnei Israel, from Mitzrayim with your 4 kosot? Well, this is what you have to do. You need to make it happen. You can't see your life in front of you as predetermined, as everything is already out there. You have to bring your fate upon yourself. You have to be active. You have to be your own ekach, eschot, eten, active person in your own life. Yosef realizes this and he tells him, I know what's going to be for you. You are going to get back to your post, and the king is once again going to reinstate you. But you know why? Because of the way you retold your own dream. We don't know what he dreamt. We only have the accounting from the butler. The Torah doesn't tell us. Same like Yosef. I only had Yosef's accounting. Now I only have the butler's accounting. And what happens here is we see what not to do. This is what, do try this at home, says the Torah. Be an active participant in your own dream, in bringing about your own redemption, and making your fate play in your favor. Do something about it. The next one, Sad HaOfim, the baker, and I feel sorry for him. The baker sees that Yosef gave his friend a good interpretation. So he comes and he tells his dream, and in his dream, and we've learned this before together, but because it's this week's parasha, I want you to see that the baker, in verse 16, is as inanimate as you could imagine. What does he say? He said, I had 3 baskets on my head, How they got here, I couldn't tell you. And on the first basket, there was all these beautiful baked goods. Maaseh ofeh, the stuff that a baker would bake. He doesn't say, I baked them and I knotted them and I basted them and nothing. Somehow they magically appeared on my head. And then what happened? The birds came and started eating from the sal that was on top of my head. Doesn't say that he said, shoo fly, don't bother me. It doesn't say, none of that. He's just a lump on a log. He's doing nothing. He doesn't know how the bread got there. Once it got there, he doesn't know. Who is he, this guy? He is the guy who thinks that his life is going to happen for him, forgetting that he has to be the most active member of bringing his future, his positive future, into being. Yosef says, sorry to tell you, buddy, I don't know what to tell you, but in 3 days, because the 3 were units of time, whether it was the vines or the baskets, in 3 days, your friend is going to serve the king, and in 3 days, you're going to be hung, and the birds are going to eat your flesh from upon you. And just to end it nicely, the 5th cup is mentioned at the end of our parasha, which is the cup of Veheveti, and I will take you to me as a nation. So we had Vehotzeti, Veitzalti, Vega'alti, Velakachti, those 4 cups, we drank them. And then we have the Veheveti, the way the king brought back the butler to once again administer for him. God too will bring us back to administer to him, our Melech, Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so just for today, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of how the Torah depicts the dreams of Yosef and how Yosef sees his role within them. And for us, we have to say, if this is the Torah giving us this information, it's telling us something very important. It's telling us you need to get out there and you need to, yes, the dreams were prophecy, and yes, they did become fulfilled. But the only way for the dreams to fulfill themselves, the only way for God's promises to us to become fulfilled, is we have to be active participants. We have to build rungs. We have to build steps. We can't be only up or only down. And we have to realize that our society, our brothers, are part of those rungs. Without them, we have no way to get out of the pit. And if we're lucky enough to make it to the penthouse, there's nothing, there are no levels sustaining us. The floor can fall from right under us without anybody there to help us along the way. So we're all rungs on the ladder. And I hope and I pray that we're all here for each other, that we're able to tie ourselves together, bundle ourselves together, sheave ourselves together, that the fate of one is seen as the fate of all, and that we're able to really, really come to a place where we all could be part of that ketonet, where we all could have a beautiful identity, where we could all have our beautiful stripes, and at the same time feel not just the tolerance or the acceptance, but the need and the dependence on each other. We need each other. We need to stick close to each other. And I hope and I pray that we're able to take all of this light that God is showing us. He's showing, I'll end with this because Hanukkah is coming. What was today it's a Chanukiah, but the menorah and the Beit HaMikdash, do you know where the light went? We would think it lit up the Beit HaMikdash. We would think that all the candles pointed towards the center, which they did. But you know where the light radiated? The light radiated outside the Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash already was filled with Or. It had Shekhinah. It had God's primal light. What we need to do if we want to resemble, if we want to be a human menorah, so to speak, is we have to take the light that's within and we have to radiate it out. That's what God wanted from Yosef. That's what Yosef is finally going to accomplish, to be continued, God willing, next week with the 2 dreams of Paro. We will be able to now add them to the mix and understand the final piece that Yosef needed to understand to become the king, and to show us what it's going to take for us to all be kings, all be Mamlechet Kohanim, and all be a Goy Kadosh. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. It's beautiful to be together. And I'm going to unmute you in case anybody has anything they'd like to say.
Thank you very much for the class.
Thank you.
Thank you so
That
much.
Michelle,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.